All right, so I want to go ahead and take us through a couple things here. So we've went ahead and discussed how we can, what LiDAR data is and how we can download it from sources like data.gov. And we've gone ahead and downloaded project data flown by NOAA in 2024 for Quinhagak. And we can see that we have 4 tiles here, and that roughly the lighter parts of the image represent higher elevations, and the darker parts of the image represent lower elevations. And this can be incredibly useful for thinking about things like village relocation or picking good housing. But we do have one problem in this data set already. It's that when they made the tiles, they didn't normalize the values across the tiles. So it looks like there's differences in elevation when there isn't. So if we look at this lake here, it looks like this should be higher ground and this should be lower, but we know that's not true because it's one consistent feature. It's a lake. So the first thing that I'm going to do to fix this is I'm going to make a composite raster of each of these 4 rasters and normalize the values. So to do that, I'm going to use the Mosaic Rasters tool. I'm going to add each one of the 4 NOAA TIFF DEMs to my project, and in the operation I'm going to pick mean. Mean is the best use here because we don't have a lot of overlap between these images, and whenever you run into a type of setting in ArcGIS Pro that you're not quite sure what it means, you can check the documentation, and usually that will walk you right through it, and if not, you can ask me or ask the internet. So I'm going to create the new layer, and it'll move pretty fast here, and I'm going to toggle off the other TIFFs because we don't need them anymore. I'm going to go to the layout I've started, and I'll see that I have nice one big composite raster. The legend I've made already shows the value. This is in feet from meters, from 1.8 meters up to 13. Pretty nice, but it doesn't look very good, right? My allotment layers are hard to see, and it might be better actually to visualize this data using one of the preset symbologies like shaded relief, which we typically use for 3D representations. And this should look a little better. We're going to get to see that the highest parts are gray, the lowest parts are down near the rivers, which are blue. I'm going to change the color ramp here to bathymetric. And I have a product here now that makes a little more sense, and it's easier for the reader of the map to see the discrete places where elevation is higher, like the airport. Now, if I go back to my layout pane, though, we'll see a problem. On our new Mosaic rasters, instead of giving us the feet, it gives us the pixel values from 0 to 255, and that is not helpful at all. A reader can't look at this map and say, hey, I know what 255 means. It's about 40 feet above sea level. So to fix this, I'm simply going to Control-C and Control-V to make a duplicate of that layer. I'm going to move it down in my contents pane, and I'm going to rename it as elevation. And I can do that by double clicking or just right clicking and going to the properties tab. So I'm going to put elevation, and then I'll even put in meters here so that we're not forgetting what it is. Now, to get this value to actually make sense instead of from 0 to 255, we can't use shaded relief. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to classify the values in the raster. It's going to ask me, it needs data by histogram. I'm going to say yes. It's going to take a little bit of time. And what I'll end up doing is using an algorithm to classify each of the pixels in this raster into discrete groups. And then I'll change the coloring on the symbology to be the same as the symbology coloring I checked here, and then we'll be able to generate a layer for the viewer that we can put in to our label in our layout pane that's going to make a little more sense. It'll probably take a little bit of time to do this. A lot of times it does, yeah. So I've got my breaks here. It looks pretty good so far, although we'll see that our colors are not correct, right? We have a difference in color between this layer, which is our classification of the pixel values, and this layer, which is our shaded relief. So to fix that, I will just pick the exact same color palette for my elevation layer. And now we should have a better kind of one-to-one match. And I might even have it classified by not just 5 classes, but let's say 7 classes. And this is a thing that you can play with a little bit. And now we have something that looks good, right? The lowest parts of the image, this color here, are between 1 and 4 meters above sea level. That's going to be near our beach. And the highest levels are between 12 and 17 meters above sea level. And that corresponds to the highest parts of our image. So now I can go to my legend here, and I'll have this new thing, but it still looks pretty bad. So what I'm going to do here is in the legend tool in my contents pane, I'm going to take off the mosaics rasters here, and now I'm only seeing that. And to change this, I don't like this value here. It doesn't tell us a whole lot. I'll go ahead and right click, go to my properties, and I will enable the layer name, which I need rename to elevation, and I'll take off the headings. And now I have a nice clean map. I like putting everything kind of in an inset panel like this and saving that layout so that I can use it again and again for every project. So just to review, what we did was we took those 4 DEMs as TIFF images and we made a composite image that normalized the values. And then we used a shaded relief to get us something that makes a little more sense for the eyes of most viewers. And then finally we cloned that layer and then used a classification tool, Jenks in this case, to give us actual values for each color so that we could bring them into a legend. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, but this should help you learn some of these basic things for cartography that sometimes can be a little overwhelming when you just start doing GIS.